The night sky above Los Angeles was cloaked in a thin mist, reflecting the red and blue glows of scattered streetlights. On the city's outskirts, at an abandoned warehouse, the elite shadow unit prepared for their mission, faces tense with focus. Tonight's task, dubbed Operation Phantom, was a covert assignment to investigate and apprehend a group suspected of plotting a major attack downtown. Intelligence had led them to an old community center in a rarely patrolled district. The building had long been rumored as a gathering place for radical groups. "No room for mistakes," commanded Commander Ryan Hayes, adjusting his tactical helmet. His steely eyes revealed a leader hardened by countless missions. "Our targets are trained and could be heavily armed," he added, glancing at the tablet displaying a 3D map of the center. "Move fast, secure the location, and capture them alive if possible." Among the squad was Sergeant Mark Turner, a battle-worn soldier whose emotions had dulled after witnessing too many comrades fall. Alongside him stood Lieutenant Sarah Collins, a tech specialist silently battling fatigue from relentless deployments. As an unmarked black van approached the location, tension surged. The community center appeared unremarkable, dimly lit with no visible activity. Yet, hours earlier, thermal scans had detected intense movement inside. "Infrared confirms about 20 people inside," Sarah whispered, double-checking her wrist display. "They're all gathered in the main hall." Ryan signaled the team to disperse into their positions. Back entrances and windows were sealed with precision tools, ensuring no escape routes. The moments leading to the breach were agonizing, every breath audible through the headsets. "Prepare the breach," ordered Ryan. A specialist stepped forward with a door-breaching device, initiating the countdown. 3, 2, 1. A controlled explosion shattered the door, and the team stormed inside with weapons raised, ready for resistance. But what they saw halted them. No chaos. No retaliation. Before them stood about 20 people in orderly rows, heads bowed in deep prayer. The melodic recitation of sacred verses echoed through the hall, creating an atmosphere both calming and powerful. 15, 20, that's the number we detected, Turner whispered, confusion seeping into his voice. Ryan kept his weapon raised, trying to process the scene. Then something strange happened. Daniels, the squad sniper, slowly lowered his rifle, his face clouded with bewilderment. "What's wrong?" Ryan hissed. "That sound, it's..." Daniels trailed off, visibly shaken. Before Ryan could respond, the recitation ceased. The congregation rose from their final prostration, turning to face the intruders with serene expressions. An elderly man with a white beard and a peaceful aura stepped forward. "Good evening, officers," he greeted gently. "Is there something we can assist you with?" Ryan felt an unexpected calm radiating from the man, disarming in its intensity. Yet, determined to maintain control, he barked, "Search every inch. Don't let them distract us." The team fanned out, scouring the building. But there was nothing unusual, just shelves lined with holy books, prayer mats neatly placed, and the faint aroma of sandalwood lingering in the air. No weapons. No evidence. Back in the prayer hall, Ryan confronted the elderly man. "Who are you? What are you hiding here?" His voice echoed through the silent room. The elder smiled gently, his composure unshaken. "We are but seekers of peace, my son. Perhaps it is not us you're meant to find tonight." The weight of his words hung in the air, and for the first time, Ryan hesitated, questioning the mission that had seemed so clear hours before. Outside, the mist thickened, but inside the hall, a different kind of clarity began to form, a truth that couldn't be seen through scopes or thermal scans. "We hide nothing, Commander." The elderly man spoke gently, his calm demeanor unwavering. "This is a house of worship. We are here only to pray. That's a lie. Sergeant Turner barked from near the entrance. We have intel that this place is being used for illegal activities. We know you're hiding something. But the elder remained composed. Perhaps your information is mistaken, Sergeant, he replied softly. You are welcome to search every corner. But may I also answer the real question you seek? Commander Ryan Hayes narrowed his eyes. And what question is that? The one that weighs on your heart tonight, the elder said, his words landing heavier than any threat. Ryan felt an unexpected jolt inside but forced himself to focus. Turner, Collins, keep searching. Don't let them distract us, he ordered. Lieutenant Sarah Collins moved to the back rooms, scanning for any hidden evidence. Instead, she found a large bookshelf filled with ancient religious texts and a small window overlooking the courtyard. As she brushed her hand over a dusty tome, a faint whisper echoed in her mind. Are you searching for answers or simply trying to justify your actions? Sarah froze. Her breath quickened as she spun around. The room was empty. A chill ran through her, and she quickly returned to the main prayer hall, her calm exterior fractured. Meanwhile, Turner explored the building's basement. It was filled with nothing but old mats and sacks of food supplies. As he ascended back to the main floor, he heard the soft, melodic recitation from above. Though he couldn't understand the language, the sound stirred something deep within him. For a moment, the hardened soldier felt a crack in the walls he'd built around his emotions. Back in the main hall, Ryan continued his interrogation. Why do you gather here every night? What are you really doing? The elder smiled, his eyes filled with compassion. We come here to remember the divine, Commander. We pray for peace, for clarity, and tonight, we also pray for you. Ryan's resolve wavered. The words felt too personal, piercing through the layers of discipline he'd built over the years. I didn't find anything, Sarah reported, her voice carrying an unusual unease. Just books and regular supplies. Same here, Turner added, though there was a strange softness in his tone. Ryan's confusion deepened. If there's nothing here, then why does this place feel different? The elder chuckled softly. Because sometimes peace unsettles a restless heart, Commander. Perhaps what you came looking for wasn't a threat, but an answer. That night, the squad left the building without finding any evidence. Yet, they departed carrying something heavier, questions they weren't prepared to face. Back at their temporary base, an unusual silence filled the air. Commander Hayes sat alone, the mosque's blueprints on his screen, but his mind lingered on the elder's words and the haunting recitations. Across the room, Turner paced back and forth, his frustration evident. I can't get it out of my head, Commander. That sound, those prayers. They're still with me. Ryan didn't look up. It's just the pressure, Turner. Missions like this mess with your mind. But deep down, he wasn't sure. For the first time in years, Ryan felt something crack within him, a seed of doubt, or perhaps something more profound. And somewhere within that silence, a journey either of them expected had quietly begun. But Captain, what if it's more than that? What if we're missing something? Turner asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. Before Richard could respond, Lieutenant Sarah Connors entered the room, holding her tablet. Her usual confidence was gone. Captain, she began hesitantly. I've been looking into the Quran, the verses they were reciting. Richard glanced at her, his brow furrowed. And? They're not about war or hate. They're prayers for guidance, for peace. It's beautiful, Sarah admitted, as if revealing something forbidden. Silence filled the room. Richard clenched his jaw, conflicted by the growing doubts within him. The next morning, Richard made an unexpected decision. He ordered Turner and Sarah to accompany him back to the mosque, but this time, without their weapons or tactical gear. They approached not as soldiers, but as seekers of answers. The mosque was peaceful, the soft recitation of midday prayers filling the air. Richard felt an unexpected calm wash over him. Sheikh Abdullah appeared, his welcoming smile unchanged. "Captain Hayes, I thought you might return," he said warmly. Richard hesitated, his authoritative demeanor softening. "We're not here to interrogate. I just need to understand." Sheikh Abdullah gestured to the prayer mats. "Then sit with us." Reluctantly, Richard, Turner, and Sarah sat down. Sheikh Abdullah spoke of Islam, the belief in one God, the purpose of life, and the peace found through submission to the Creator. As he spoke, Richard listened intently. The words resonated deeply, stirring something within him. Turner, burdened by years of warfare, felt a lump in his throat. "So, it's all about peace?" he asked, his voice trembling. Sheikh Abdullah nodded. "True peace comes when the heart connects with its Creator. Sometimes, the most restless hearts are closest to finding it." Sarah, always skeptical of religion, felt her defenses weaken. "But how do you know it's real? How do you know this is the truth?" Sheikh Abdullah smiled gently. "Truth speaks to the soul, Lieutenant. The soul recognizes its Creator, even when the mind resists." As the conversation deepened, something extraordinary unfolded. The soldiers, trained for battle, felt their hearts softening. The mosque, once seen as a potential threat, now felt like a sanctuary. As the sun set, Richard spoke, his voice breaking. "We've spent our lives fighting battles. But maybe the real battle was within ourselves." Sheikh Abdullah placed a reassuring hand on Richard's shoulder. "It's never too late to find peace, Captain." That evening, under the golden glow of the setting sun, Richard, Turner, and Sarah made a life-altering decision. With trembling voices and hearts full of emotion, they recited the Shahada. "I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger." Tears streamed down their faces as they prostrated for the first time, their foreheads touching the ground in submission. Years of searching for purpose had led them here. In the days that followed, the Delta Squad completed their mission and returned to their lives. But for Richard, Turner, and Sarah, nothing was the same. They carried a newfound peace, no longer haunted by their past. Their journey had begun with suspicion and fear but ended with faith and redemption. From soldiers of war to seekers of truth, they had discovered a path that would guide them for the rest of their lives. In a prestigious research facility in Beijing, a group of brilliant scientists gathered in a high-tech conference room. These experts, who usually focused on quantum mechanics, space exploration, and genetics, were now facing an unexpected challenge, analyzing an ancient scripture that has existed for over 1,400 years, the Quran. At the head of the room stood Professor Li Wei, a respected astrophysicist, who addressed his colleagues with a serious tone. "The government has assigned us to investigate claims that the Quran contains scientific knowledge that was unknown at the time of its revelation. Our job is to analyze these claims with an objective, scientific approach." A few scientists exchanged skeptical glances. Dr. Eric Zhou, a well-known biologist and atheist, chuckled. "Are we really here to validate religious texts with science? Haven't we always seen science and religion as separate?" However, not everyone shared his doubt. Wang, an oceanographer, responded. "Actually, there are passages in the Quran that describe natural phenomena with remarkable accuracy. Wouldn't it be worth exploring how this is possible?" Professor Li Wei nodded. "That's exactly why we are here. Are these descriptions mere coincidences, or is there something deeper to uncover?" As the discussion unfolded, the large screen in front of them displayed various verses from the Quran related to the universe, nature, and human development. With advanced computers, satellite data, and research tools at their disposal, the scientists were about to embark on a journey that none of them could have anticipated. The first verse they examined caught everyone's attention. Do the unbelievers not realize that the heavens and the earth were once joined together, then we separated them? Quran 21:30. The room fell silent. Some scientists frowned, deep in thought, while others immediately began searching for related scientific theories. Dr. Sun, a cosmologist specializing in the origins of the universe, leaned forward. This is eerily similar to the Big Bang theory. It suggests that the heavens and the earth were once a single entity before being separated. At first, he dismissed it as a mere coincidence. Surely this is just an interpretation, he murmured. Professor Li Wei, however, challenged him. Consider this: the Big Bang theory, which describes the universe beginning as a single point before expanding, was only confirmed in the 20th century through the discovery of cosmic background radiation. Yet this verse from the Quran was revealed more than 1,400 years ago. A deep hush settled over the room. The skeptical expressions began to shift into something else: astonishment. But the surprises didn't stop there. The next verse displayed on the screen read, "And the heavens we constructed with strength, and indeed, we are expanding it." Quran 51:47. Dr. Sun stared at the verse in disbelief. This is impossible. The concept that the universe is expanding wasn't proven until Edwin Hubble's discovery in 1929. Before that, scientists assumed the universe was static. One by one, the scientists began to question everything they had once believed. What started as an investigation filled with skepticism was now turning into a journey of discovery, one that would lead many of them to reconsider their views on faith and science. Dr. Chin, who had been one of the most skeptical scientists in the room, now sat in complete silence. His gaze remained fixed on the screen, his mind racing. How could this ancient book contain such precise knowledge? His confidence in his skepticism was beginning to waver. Professor Li Wei surveyed the room, reading the expressions of his colleagues. So far, we have not found any contradictions in these verses, he stated firmly. The knowledge we have confirmed only in recent centuries appears to have been written in this book long before modern science even existed. Dr. Eric Zhou, who had also been skeptical at the start of the research, exhaled deeply. Could this all be a coincidence? Or is there something far greater at play here? No one had an immediate answer. The scientists sat in deep thought, their previous assumptions unraveling before their eyes. They had entered this room believing they would disprove the Quran's scientific claims, but now, for the first time, they were beginning to question their own beliefs. The room remained heavy with silence. These experts, who had spent their entire lives dedicated to science, now found themselves confronted with knowledge from a book they had once dismissed as ancient folklore. Yet, their work was not finished. It was time to analyze the Quran's description of human development. Dr. Prominent Biologist stood at the front of the room. He hesitated slightly before reading aloud from the screen. Indeed, we created man from an extract of clay. Then we placed him as a drop of fluid in a secure lodging. Then we developed the drop into a clot, then the clot into a lump, then the lump into bones, and then we covered the bones with flesh. Then we formed him into another creation. So blessed is Allah, the best of creators. Quran 23:12-14. A few seconds passed in silence as the scientists processed the words. They carefully reread the passage, comparing it to their own knowledge of human embryology. Dr. Eric Zhou finally spoke, his voice unsteady. This verse outlines the stages of fetal development in a way that is incredibly detailed and accurate. He swallowed hard before continuing. This knowledge was completely unknown until the invention of the microscope, which allowed us to study embryology in the modern era. Professor Li Wei folded his arms. Let's cross-check this with our current scientific understanding. Within moments, they had pulled up the latest research on fetal development. One by one, they compared each stage described in the Quran with the findings of modern embryology. Dr. Eric Show's hands trembled as he read aloud. In the earliest stage, the embryo does appear like a clot of blood. Then, as development progresses, it transforms into flesh and later bones begin to form. Eventually, muscle tissue wraps around the bones, exactly as the Quran describes. Dr. Wang, who had been quietly observing, finally broke his silence. This doesn't add up. These facts were only confirmed in the 20th century. How could they have been written in a book over 1,000 years ago? The room grew even heavier. Their skepticism was no longer as strong as it had been at the beginning of their research. What had once seemed impossible was now unfolding before their very eyes. But there was more. Hang, a forensic scientist, typed rapidly on his computer before displaying another verse on the screen. Does man think that we will not reassemble his bones? Yes, indeed, we are able to proportion his very fingertips. Quran 75:3-4. Fingertips? Hang murmured, frowning. His eyes darted between the screen and his own research. This isn't just about bones. This verse emphasizes the uniqueness of fingertips. He pointed at an image of human fingerprints on the screen. We now know that every individual has a unique fingerprint pattern. Even identical twins do not share the same fingerprints. This fact is a cornerstone of modern forensic science. The screen showed a magnified comparison of fingerprint patterns. The realization hit them all at once. Dr. Wang leaned back in his chair, his voice barely above a whisper. How is this possible? No one had an answer. Professor Li Wei took a deep breath. We came into this research expecting to disprove the Quran's scientific claims. But so far, every claim we've tested has aligned with modern science. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Anxiety and disbelief filled the air. Some scientists appeared deeply shaken, as if their entire understanding of reality had been turned upside down. Finally, Dr. Wang spoke again. If only one or two verses matched modern discoveries, we could dismiss it as coincidence. But this is happening again and again. The scientists sat in stunned silence, realizing that their journey of discovery was far from over. The tension in the research lab was palpable. The team of elite scientists, once firm believers in the absolute supremacy of science, now found themselves grappling with something they never anticipated. The Quran, an ancient text they had dismissed, seemed to contain knowledge that aligned perfectly with modern discoveries. Dr. Eric Zhou, who had been the most vocal skeptic, now sat in silence, his mind racing. He stared at the screen, his eyes glistening. If this is true, if this book really originates from a divine source, then everything we believed until now has been a deception, he murmured. The room fell into a deep, uneasy silence. Some scientists lowered their heads, overwhelmed by the weight of their findings. They had dedicated their lives to uncovering the secrets of the universe, yet the answers they sought had apparently been inscribed in this book long before the advent of modern technology. After what felt like an eternity, Professor Li Wei cleared his throat. Our research isn't complete yet. We need to investigate further. But I must admit. He paused, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I no longer feel like we're just analyzing an ordinary book. No one objected. A shift had taken place, an undeniable change in their hearts. The screen flickered, displaying yet another verse. He has set the two seas in motion, one fresh and sweet, the other salty and bitter, and he placed between them a barrier they cannot cross. Quran 25:53. Dr. Wang, an expert in oceanography, stepped forward, eyes scanning the words carefully. This verse speaks of two bodies of water that meet but do not mix, he said slowly. Professor Li Wei nodded. Islamic teachings claim that there are points where fresh water and salt water flow side by side but do not merge completely. Some of the scientists frowned. Scientifically, this sounded impossible. Water should naturally blend together upon contact. But modern oceanographic research had revealed something astonishing. This phenomenon actually exists. Dr. Wang pulled up satellite images of places like the Strait of Gibraltar and the confluence of the Amazon River with the Atlantic Ocean. We've confirmed that due to differences in salinity and density, these waters remain distinct. The room remained eerily quiet as the images displayed undeniable proof of the Quran's claim. Dr. Chen, who had dismissed every prior finding, now seemed unsettled. His voice was barely above a whisper. But how? This couldn't have been observed with the naked eye. No instruments existed at that time to detect such phenomena. No one had an answer. A heavy realization dawned upon them. They were dealing with something far beyond their expectations. Professor Li Wei exhaled sharply. Let's move on to the next phenomenon. With a tap on his tablet, the screen changed again, now displaying an entirely different but equally perplexing verse. And in the sea, there is a blazing fire. Quran 52:6. Dr. Chen, an expert in volcanology, stiffened. His breath caught in his throat. This? I know about this, he admitted, his voice low, almost fearful. Underwater volcanoes. All eyes turned toward him. At the ocean floor, there are massive cracks in the Earth's crust, releasing lava with temperatures exceeding thousands of degrees. By all logic, the seawater should extinguish the flames, but instead, the fire continues to burn due to immense pressure. His hands trembled as he quickly typed on his computer, bringing up footage from deep-sea expeditions. Images of glowing lava spewing from the ocean floor filled the screen, casting an eerie glow in the dark depths of the sea. The room remained frozen. The Quran had described yet another phenomenon that modern science had only recently discovered. What they once believed to be coincidence was now beginning to feel like something far greater. The screen displayed an astonishing sight: flames burning on the seabed. It was a phenomenon that would have been unimaginable to someone from the 7th century. The room fell into a heavy silence as the scientists stared in disbelief. This is real," one of them murmured, barely able to process what they were seeing. Many among them, whether atheists or devout followers of other faiths, had entered the laboratory with the intent of analyzing the Quran scientifically, expecting to dismiss its claims as ancient myths. But now, confronted with undeniable evidence, their beliefs were being shaken to the core. Dr. Eric Zhou lowered his head. "If all of this is true, then we've been living in ignorance," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Professor Li Wei looked around at his colleagues. His eyes, usually sharp and analytical, now glistened with unshed tears. He had spent his entire career believing that science could explain everything, that human knowledge alone could uncover the secrets of the universe. But now, he stood at the edge of something far greater than he had ever imagined. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I thought science had all the answers. But now, I see something beyond our understanding." The weight of the moment settled over them. Dr. Wang, his voice trembling, finally spoke. "I want to learn more about Islam." All eyes turned to him, surprise evident on their faces. Yet, one by one, the others nodded in agreement. "Me too," Dr. Wang added. Dr. Michael Huang took a deep breath before speaking. "I can't ignore this anymore." What had begun as a research project to scrutinize an ancient text had now become a journey of self-discovery. Scientists who had once dismissed faith were now questioning everything they had believed. Then, in that very research facility, surrounded by screens displaying scientific data and evidence from around the world, one by one, they recited words they never thought they would say. "I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger." Emotion filled the room. Tears were shed, not out of sorrow, but out of the overwhelming realization that they had found something more profound than mere scientific theories. That day, in a highly advanced research center in China, something beyond logic and reason had taken place. The light of faith had entered their hearts. The next morning, the entire lab felt different. The usual sounds of scientific debates and clattering keyboards were replaced by a contemplative silence. Scientists who had spent their lives relying solely on logic now sat deep in thought, reflecting on something greater than their research. Professor Li Wei stood by the large glass window, staring out at the city skyline. In the distance, the faint sound of the call to prayer could be heard. If the Quran truly holds the answers we have discovered, then what does that mean for our lives? He murmured. He turned to his colleagues, searching their faces. We have to admit, we were blind to something greater, he finally said. Dr. Arya sighed, nodding. I never thought I would say this, but I feel the same. A tear slid down Dr. Caven's cheek. So do I, he whispered. One after another, the others nodded in silent agreement. The discovery they had made was not just about science, it was about truth, about purpose, and about a reality they could no longer ignore. The atmosphere in the laboratory had completely transformed. The scientists, who once viewed faith as mere superstition, now found themselves standing at the threshold of a profound realization. Dr. Wang finally spoke, his voice heavy with emotion. For years I rejected the idea of God. I dismissed faith as an illusion. He paused, his voice trembling. But now I see the truth. A deep silence filled the room as his words sank in. I think we all feel the same way, another scientist admitted. How can we return to our old lives after everything we've uncovered? At that moment they all knew this was no longer just a scientific discovery. It was the beginning of something far greater. One by one, they exchanged glances, as if waiting for someone to take the first step. Then, with unwavering sincerity, voices began to break through the silence. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Tears of joy streamed down their faces as the weight of this moment settled in. They had embarked on this research to challenge an ancient book, but instead, they had found undeniable truth. In the days that followed, the research center was no longer just a place for scientific studies. It had become a place of reflection, learning, and transformation. The Quran was no longer seen as an object of research, but as a guide for life. Scientists who had spent years immersed in data and equations now found themselves dedicating time outside of work to learning prayer, understanding its meaning, and experiencing a peace unlike anything they had felt before. Professor Li Wei, who once believed only in the laws of physics, now often sat in his laboratory, gazing at the vast universe through his telescope. Every star, every galaxy, none of it felt like coincidence anymore. There is a miracle behind everything, he murmured one night. A creator who governs every second of existence. News of the scientist's transformation spread. Skeptical colleagues arrived, hoping to challenge their findings. But the more they investigated, the more they, too, found themselves drawn to the truth. What began as a scientific study had now sparked a spiritual awakening, turning the research center into not only a hub of discovery, but also a beacon of deeper understanding. Under the vast sky, in a place once driven purely by logic and numbers, a new light now shone, one that illuminated hearts that had once been filled with doubt. They were no longer just scientists seeking facts. They had become seekers of truth, standing in awe of the Creator's signs. Their lives had changed forever. No longer bound by a materialistic worldview, they now saw science as a path to recognizing the greatness of Allah. Professor Li Wei, once a staunch believer in physics alone, now spent nights contemplating the divine precision of the universe. This is just the beginning, he told his colleagues one day. And indeed it was. As all the scientists together proclaimed, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. It felt as if the entire world paused for a moment. Their eyes reflected peace, as if they had finally found the truth they had spent their whole lives searching for. Professor Li Wei looked up at the sky, took a deep breath, and softly said, We tried to seek the truth through science, But the real light was hidden within these very words. Dr. Omar smiled, holding his hand firmly, and said, "Now we will not keep this light to ourselves." In the darkness of the lab, a new light had begun to shine, one that could not be seen through microscopes or telescopes, but could only be felt by those who sincerely sought the truth. My name is Ahmed, and for as long as I can remember, my life has been deeply rooted in the teachings of Islam. I was born into a devout family where faith wasn't just a belief, it was the very foundation of our lives. 5 times a day, I would bow in prayer, reciting the verses of the Quran with deep reverence. The mosque was my refuge, a place of peace and guidance. I took pride in my devotion, believing that my unwavering commitment to Allah and the principles of Islam would lead me to eternal salvation. My understanding of the world was shaped by the Quran and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. I studied Hadiths, memorized key surah, and sought answers to life's questions through Islamic scholarship. There was a rhythm to my life, a sense of purpose that came from knowing I was walking the straight path, as described in the Quran. Yet, despite my strong faith, there were moments of doubt, fleeting thoughts that I couldn't ignore. Late at night, I sometimes found myself lying awake, questioning the nature of God and the concept of salvation. The Quran spoke of deeds being weighed on the day of judgment, but what if my efforts weren't enough? What if, despite my devotion, my sins outweighed my good deeds? These thoughts were brief, quickly drowned out by prayer and study, but they lingered in the back of my mind like a faint shadow. I had always respected other religions, and as a student of theology, I found it fascinating to learn about different beliefs, especially Christianity. However, I viewed Christianity as flawed. The idea that Jesus could be the Son of God seemed incomprehensible to me. In Islam, he was a revered prophet, a messenger, but still a man. The concept of the Trinity was beyond my understanding, and the idea of salvation through grace alone felt like a way to bypass personal accountability. For years, I carried these convictions, often debating Christians whenever the opportunity arose. I was confident in my arguments, quoting the Quran and pointing out what I saw as inconsistencies in the Bible. My faith felt unshakable, and I took pride in defending Islam with logic and clarity. Yet, beneath that certainty, the quiet doubts remained. Everything changed during a visit to my family in another city. The day had started like any other. I woke up early for Fajr prayer, recited my daily supplications, and spent the morning discussing theology with my younger brother. But by the afternoon, I began feeling unwell. A slight discomfort in my chest made me uneasy, though I brushed it off as nothing serious. By evening, the discomfort had turned into a sharp, stabbing pain that made it difficult to breathe. "Ahmed, we're going to the hospital," my brother said firmly, grabbing his keys. I protested, as I always did when it came to medical issues. "It's probably just indigestion. I'll be fine." But the pain only worsened. By the time we arrived at the emergency room, I could barely stand. The doctors quickly assessed me, their expressions growing more serious with each passing moment. Within an hour, I was lying on a hospital bed, hooked up to machines. "You're experiencing a severe heart attack," the doctor explained. My mind raced. A heart attack? At my age? It didn't make sense. I had always taken care of myself, eating right, exercising, praying regularly. How could this be happening to me? As the doctors worked to stabilize me, I felt a fear unlike anything I had ever known. I thought about my family, my life, and the prayers I had yet to offer. Was this the end? Was I about to meet my Creator, unprepared, uncertain? The room blurred. The voices of the medical staff faded into the background. My chest felt like it was being crushed, each breath more labored than the last. I closed my eyes, whispering the declaration of faith. The declaration of faith, over and over, desperate to cling to the one thing I had always believed would save me. There is no God but Allah. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Darkness enveloped me. For a moment, there was nothing, no pain, no sound, no light. Just silence. But deep within that silence, I sensed something. Someone. And then, the darkness shifted. I wasn't in my body anymore. It was the strangest sensation, like floating, yet without weight. I looked down and saw myself lying on the hospital bed, surrounded by frantic doctors and nurses. The machines beeped erratically. My chest rose and fell shallowly. My brother stood nearby, his face pale with worry, his hands gripping the edge of a chair. At that moment I knew my life was about to change forever. My brother's knuckles turned white as he gripped the chair tightly, his face filled with worry. I should have felt panic, but I didn't. Instead, I was eerily calm, as if I were watching a scene from a movie. I tried to speak, to call out to my brother, to tell him that I was still here, but no sound came. In fact, I wasn't even sure I had a mouth in this form. The pain was gone, yet I felt an odd detachment, as if I were tethered to a different reality. I could observe everything, but I couldn't interact. What is happening? My mind raced. Am I dead? The thought sent a chill through me. My faith had always taught me that after death, the soul is judged, its deeds weighed, its fate decided. But this wasn't what I had imagined. There were no angels, no familiar signs of judgment. Just me, floating above my own body, caught between confusion and an unsettling stillness. And then I noticed it. A light. It wasn't like any light I had ever seen. It wasn't blinding or harsh, yet it radiated an intensity that seemed to pierce straight through me. It pulsed softly, growing brighter with each passing moment as though it were alive. The light wasn't coming from the hospital room. It was beyond, somewhere distant yet incredibly close. And I felt it pulling me in, an irresistible force reaching into the core of whatever I was now. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to resist, to stay connected to the reality I knew. But the light had a magnetism that was impossible to ignore. It wasn't just something to be seen, it was something to be felt. A presence. It called to me, not with words, but with a profound feeling I couldn't comprehend. The hospital room around me began to fade. The beeping monitors, the doctor's frantic voices, even my brother's anxious presence, all of it started dissolving into nothingness. The only thing that remained was the light, pulling me toward it. At first I fought it. But I quickly realized that resistance was futile. The pull wasn't forceful or violent, it was gentle yet undeniable. As I moved closer, I felt something new. Warmth. Not the kind of warmth you feel under the sun, but something deeper, something that seemed to penetrate my very soul. It was soothing, yet carried an undercurrent of power that left me in awe. The light wasn't just something external. It was alive. What is this? I asked myself, though the question felt small in the presence of such overwhelming brilliance. Where am I going? A part of me was afraid. This wasn't what I had been taught. I had spent my entire life studying scripture, believing in the unseen, trusting in the words of the Quran. But this wasn't part of any teaching I had encountered. The light didn't fit into my understanding of what came after death. And that terrified me. Yet another part of me couldn't deny it. The light wasn't just calling me, it was inviting me. And deep down, I knew this was no ordinary experience. This was something divine. Something that would shatter everything I thought I knew. I moved closer, and the warmth wrapped around me completely. And for the first time, I felt something else. Peace. Not just calmness. Not just comfort. But a peace so complete, so all-encompassing, that it stripped away every worry, every doubt, every fear. Yet, even in that serenity, I knew something profound was about to happen. This wasn't just an experience. It was a reckoning. The light wasn't just a destination. It was a doorway. And I was about to step through. I hesitated for just a moment, hovering at the threshold. I felt unworthy. unprepared. What lies beyond this? What is waiting for me? But the light seemed to answer without words. It reassured me simply through its presence. Taking a deep breath, or what felt like one, I stepped forward. And in that moment, everything changed. The warmth I had felt before now wrapped around me completely, filling me with a sense of peace that was both humbling and overwhelming. The brightness wasn't just light anymore. It was alive, vibrant, pulsating with a power beyond comprehension. And then, I saw him. At first, the figure was difficult to make out, emerging from the brilliance of the light. But as he stepped forward, his presence alone struck me with an immediate sense of awe. The moment he came closer, waves of love and compassion washed over me. It wasn't just an emotion. It was something more. It felt as though an overwhelming presence of love radiated from him, surrounding me and filling every part of my being. Who are you?" I managed to ask, though my voice felt small and insignificant in the gravity of the moment. He gazed at me with eyes that seemed to pierce through my soul, reaching every hidden corner of my existence. Yet, his look was not condemning. It was filled with deep understanding, as though he knew everything about me and still embraced me with unconditional love. "I'm Isa," he said gently. His words struck me like a bolt of lightning. "Isa?" My mind raced to process what was happening. As a Muslim, I had always believed in Isa, peace be upon him, as a revered prophet, a great messenger of God. But nothing more. The idea that he could be something beyond that was something I had never entertained, something I had debated against countless times. And yet, here he stood before me, more real than anything I had ever experienced. "That's not possible," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "You are a prophet. How can this be?" Isa smiled, a smile filled with patience and kindness. "You have many questions, Ahmad," he said, "and I am here to help you find the answers." I wanted to speak, to question, to make sense of what was happening, but before I could, the world around us shifted. Suddenly, scenes of light appeared before me, vivid, full of life, as though I was being transported to another time and place. The first scene was familiar, stories from the Quran about Isa, peace be upon him. I saw him healing the sick, giving sight to the blind, and even raising the dead. These were miracles I had always accepted as truth, but seeing them unfold before my very eyes gave them a new weight, a significance I could not ignore. His touch radiated compassion, his words carried authority. It was unlike anything I had ever imagined. Then the scenes changed. I saw moments from accounts I had previously dismissed. I saw Isa speaking to his closest followers, his words filled with love that transcended human understanding. I saw him praying, his sorrow and anguish evident as he prepared for what was to come. And then I saw pain and sacrifice. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The suffering was undeniable, but there was also strength, a purpose beyond what I could comprehend. "Why?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why did this happen?" "For you," he said simply. "For all of you." His words cut through me like a blade. My understanding of salvation had always been tied to deeds, to the idea of earning favor through righteous actions. The thought that someone would willingly bear such a burden out of love was almost beyond comprehension. The scene shifted again. This time, I saw words, passages from divine scriptures placed side by side. Isa pointed towards prophecies I had read countless times but had never truly understood, verses that spoke of guidance, salvation, and a light to all nations. And then, I saw their fulfillment in ways I had never before considered. "How could I not see this?" I asked, my heart heavy with realization. "How did I miss the truth?" "Because you were searching," Isa said, his voice gentle. "And now you have found it." Tears streamed down my face as the weight of his words sank in. Everything I had believed, everything I had clung to, was shifting before my eyes. Yet, in this moment of upheaval, I felt an unexpected clarity, as though the pieces of a puzzle I had struggled with all my life were finally falling into place. "There is more to see," Isa said, his eyes filled with compassion. "Will you come with me?" I nodded. Though my mind was still spinning, one thing was clear: my life would never be the same. As Isa extended his hand toward me, the world around us shifted once again. Light expanded, enveloping everything, and I felt weightless, as though I was being carried into a new realm. Yet I was not afraid. I trusted him, even though I did not fully understand what was happening or why. The first thing I saw was breathtaking. A place filled with colors more vibrant than anything I had ever known. The air itself carried a sense of peace, joy, and harmony. There was no pain, no suffering, no sorrow, only love, pure and overwhelming. In the distance, I saw people, beings of every kind, their faces illuminated with an inner glow of joy and serenity. They moved freely, laughing and embracing one another, as if they had finally found completeness. "This is the reward," Isa said warmly. "This is the fulfillment of the promise." I could barely speak, overwhelmed by the beauty of it all. "It's perfect," I finally managed to say. "This is what I've prayed for, isn't it?" Isa nodded. "It is given not by deeds alone, but through faith." His words shook me. I had always understood righteousness as a balance, good deeds outweighing bad, prayer offered at the right times, fasting observed correctly. But here, Isa was telling me that it was about something more. "Faith?" I whispered, both confused and hopeful. "What do you mean?" Isa looked at me gently. "No one is perfect, Ahmad. No one can live a life without flaw, no matter how much they try. The love of the Creator is not something to be earned, it is a gift, given to those who accept it with sincerity. That is why I was sent, to show you the way, so that through faith you may find peace." His words shook the foundation of everything I had believed. My entire life had been about striving, about doing enough to be worthy in the eyes of God. But here, in this place of pure peace, I was being told it wasn't about being worthy. It was about trust, about submission, about finding the way. Before I could fully process his words, the scene shifted again. The warmth and light faded, replaced by a cold, oppressive darkness. The air became thick, heavy, suffocating. In the distance, I heard faint cries, anguish, desperate, filled with regret. "This is the consequence," Isa said, his voice sorrowful. "This is the absence of light." I didn't want to see it, but the vision became clearer. I saw figures moving in the shadows, their faces contorted in pain, lost in a place of despair. They reached out, searching for something, someone. I turned back toward Isa, my heart pounding. "What does this mean?" He looked at me with infinite patience. "It is your choice, Ahmad. The path is before you. The question is, will you take it?" But there was no answer. The sense of despair was overwhelming, piercing deep into my soul. "Why?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Why do they suffer like this?" "They chose separation," came the solemn response. "God's love is offered to all, but not everyone accepts it. This place is not about His wrath, it is the absence of His presence. It is the natural consequence of rejecting the gift of salvation." I couldn't look away. The suffering, the emptiness, it was more terrifying than anything I had ever imagined. And yet, even in the midst of that darkness, I felt an overwhelming love radiating from him. It was as though his heart ached for every soul that had turned away. "Do you understand now, Ahmed?" he asked, his eyes meeting mine. "The choices you make in life matter, not because of what you can earn, but because of the relationship you choose to have with God." Tears streamed down my face as his words sank in. I had spent my life striving, praying, fasting, doing everything I could to be good enough. But here, in his presence, I realized that all he wanted was my heart. "Ahmed," he said, his voice both gentle and firm. Will you accept my gift? Will you trust me to lead you to the truth? I hesitated, not out of doubt, but because of the weight of the moment. Everything I had ever believed, everything I had built my life upon, was being called into question. But deep down I knew. I could feel it in every part of me. Yes, I finally said, my voice breaking. I trust you. The light around us grew brighter, warmer, and I felt a peace unlike anything I had ever known. It wasn't just peace, it was freedom. Freedom from fear, from striving, from the burden of trying to earn something that could only be given. There is more for you to do, he said, his tone filled with purpose. You must return and share what you have seen. Return? I asked, startled. But I don't want to leave. I want to stay here with you. He smiled, a smile that was both comforting and challenging. Your time here is not yet finished. There are people who need to hear your story, Ahmed. They need to know the truth. The light began to shift again, and I felt a pull, as though I were being drawn back to the world I had left behind. I didn't want to go, but I knew I had to. I had been given a purpose, and I couldn't ignore it. As the vision of that place faded, his final words echoed in my mind. Go, Ahmed. Share the truth. I will be with you always. When I opened my eyes, the radiant light was gone. In its place, the sterile glow of fluorescent hospital lights filled my vision. A sharp pain burned in my chest, and the sound of beeping machines surrounded me. The scent of antiseptic filled my lungs, and I realized I was back in my body, back in the world I had thought I had left behind. He's back! One of the doctors exclaimed. I blinked, my vision blurry, trying to focus on the figures moving around me. My brother's face appeared, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and joy. Ahmed, can you hear me? He asked, his voice trembling. I nodded weakly, but I couldn't find the words to respond. My mind was racing, trying to reconcile the overwhelming experience I had just gone through with the reality I was now in. I had seen something beyond this world, felt something beyond what I had ever known. And now, I was here again, in a body that felt foreign, in a world that suddenly seemed so small. The doctors spoke in hushed, hurried tones, marveling at my sudden recovery. It's a miracle, one of them murmured. We thought we had lost him. My brother gripped my hand tightly, tears streaming down his face. Alhamdulillah, he whispered. You're alive. Alive. The word felt heavy, almost foreign. Just moments ago, or at least, it had felt like moments, I had stood in a realm beyond anything this world could offer. I had felt a love unlike any I had ever known. And now, I was here again, surrounded by those who could never fully understand what had just happened to me. For hours I said little. My family stayed close, their relief evident in every glance and gesture. But inside, a storm raged. What had I just experienced? How could I reconcile it with everything I had believed my entire life? Late that night, when the hospital was quiet and my family had gone home to rest, I lay staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment in my mind. The light. The love. The vision. The words. They were all so vivid, so undeniable. And yet fear gripped me. If I spoke about this, what would happen? My family had always been devout, proud of our faith and heritage. How could I tell them that everything we had believed might not be the full truth? I closed my eyes, hoping for sleep, but instead, I saw his face again, kind, loving, patient. His words echoed in my mind. Go, Ahmed. Share the truth. I will be with you always. The thought both comforted and terrified me. Over the next few days, as my body slowly healed, my mind remained restless. I couldn't ignore what I had seen, but I also couldn't talk about it. Not yet. I needed answers, clarity, something to help me make sense of it all. One afternoon, when I was finally alone, I reached for my phone and began searching. I didn't even know where to start. But eventually I found myself reading about him in ways I never had before. I read about his teachings, his miracles, his sacrifice. I read about grace, a concept that had once seemed foreign to me, but now felt like a lifeline. And then, for the first time in my life, I opened a Bible. It felt strange, almost forbidden. But as I began to read, I couldn't stop. The words leapt off the page, resonating with everything I had experienced. It was as if the book itself was alive, speaking directly to my soul. The more I read, the more the pieces began to fit together. Passages I had overlooked or misunderstood suddenly made sense. Yet with each revelation, the weight of my decision grew heavier. I couldn't keep this to myself forever. I had been called to share the truth. But the thought of doing so filled me with dread. How would my family react? My community? My entire identity had been rooted in my faith. What would they think if I told them what had happened to me? That night, as I lay in bed, the burden became too much to bear. I couldn't do this alone. I needed to talk to someone I trusted, someone who might understand. My brother came to mind. We had always been close, and while I knew he might struggle to believe me, I also knew he cared about me enough to listen. Taking a deep breath, I picked up my phone and dialed his number. When he answered, I could hear the concern in his voice. "Ahmed, is everything okay?" "No," I admitted, my voice unsteady. "I need to tell you something that happened while I was gone." There was a pause on the other end. "Okay," he said cautiously. "What is it?" As I prepared to speak, fear tightened in my chest. But then I reminded myself that I wasn't alone. This was just the beginning. When I finally decided to share my story, it felt like stepping into a storm, unsure if I would make it through. I started with someone I trusted the most, my closest friend, Hassan. He had always been the one I could turn to, no matter how difficult the situation. If anyone would listen, it would be him. "Hassan," I began hesitantly as we sat together over tea. "I need to tell you something. But it's different. It's about what happened when I was in the hospital." He raised an eyebrow, concern flashing across his face. "You mean when we thought we had lost you?" I nodded. "Yes. But I didn't just lose consciousness, Hassan. I went somewhere. I saw something. Someone." His expression grew serious, and he leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Taking a deep breath, I recounted everything, what I had seen, what I had felt. When I finished, there was a long silence. Hassan stared at me, a mix of emotions on his face. "Ahmed," he said finally, his voice quiet but firm. "You've always been a person of faith, a seeker of truth. But it's hard to believe. Are you sure it wasn't just a dream? The mind can play tricks when the body is under stress." I shook my head. "I've thought about that, Hassan. But this wasn't a dream. It was more real than anything I've ever experienced." He looked away, struggling to process my words. "If you talk about this, people may not accept it." "I know," I said. "But I can't keep it to myself." Some listened, some doubted, and some dismissed me completely. But there were also those who paused, who considered, who asked questions. And that gave me courage. This was only the beginning of the journey. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't alone. In the beginning, the reactions were mixed. Some people were genuinely curious, asking thoughtful questions about my experience and how it connected with both the Quran and the Bible. Others were skeptical, accusing me of being misled or straying from my beliefs. But the most difficult reactions came from those closest to me, my family. When I finally shared my experience with my parents, their shock was evident. "Ahmed, how can you say such things?" my father asked, his voice filled with a mixture of anger and pain. "We raised you to follow our faith, to live according to the teachings of Islam, and now you're saying that what we've always believed isn't enough? It's not about rejecting what we've believed, I replied gently. It's about seeing it fulfilled. Jesus isn't just a prophet, he is the path to God. He revealed this truth to me. My mother's eyes welled with tears, and I could see the struggle in her heart. She wanted to understand, but reconciling my words with the faith she had held all her life was not easy. My siblings had mixed reactions. Some dismissed my story entirely, while others seemed quietly curious but hesitant to express their thoughts. Facing their doubt and disappointment was one of the hardest trials I had ever endured. The fear of losing my family weighed heavily on me, but so did the responsibility of sharing what I had learned. I prayed constantly for their understanding, for their hearts to open to the truth, even as I faced rejection. In those trying times, I found comfort and strength in a new spiritual family. A local faith community welcomed me with open arms, offering warmth and encouragement as I navigated this unfamiliar path. They didn't see me as someone who had abandoned one faith for another. They saw me as a brother, someone who had found grace and truth. I also connected with others who had walked similar journeys, people from different backgrounds who had encountered powerful spiritual experiences. Their stories reassured me that I wasn't alone, that many others had faced the same challenges and found the same hope. As I continued to share my testimony, I began to witness lives changing. Some who had been indifferent to faith started asking deeper questions. Others, who had once been rigid in their beliefs, began to consider new perspectives. And a few, like me, took a leap of faith towards something greater. One of the most powerful moments in my journey happened late one night when my younger brother, who had initially dismissed my experience, came to me with a hesitant but sincere look in his eyes. "Ahmed," he said quietly, "I've been thinking about what you said, about Jesus, about grace. I don't know if I fully understand it yet, but I want to learn more." Tears filled my eyes as I embraced him. "That's all I ask," I said. "Seek the truth, and you will find your answer." As my journey continued, I found ways to use my unique background to build bridges between different faiths. I spoke about the shared values of love, devotion, and the pursuit of truth. I pointed out the connections between scriptures, showing how many teachings aligned in unexpected ways. But beyond all that, I emphasized that the message I had received was not just about religion, it was about a personal connection with the divine, one built on love, grace, and forgiveness. Looking back, I can see how every challenge, every doubt, and every struggle in my life had been preparing me for this mission. The road hasn't been easy, but every hardship has been worth it. Each difficult conversation, each moment of doubt, and each rejection has been overshadowed by the joy of witnessing lives transformed by truth. As I conclude this chapter of my journey, I want to leave you with this thought: seeking truth takes courage. It requires a willingness to question, to explore, and to trust that you will be guided toward what is right. But I promise you, it's worth it. If my story has touched your heart in any way, I encourage you to continue seeking, to open your heart, and to allow yourself to explore the possibilities. The answers you seek may be closer than you realize. Thank you for listening to my journey. If you have thoughts to share or if you seek guidance, feel free to reach out. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, continue exploring. Each journey is a testament to faith, grace, and the endless power of love.